So what we learned from that was we really needed to have an all-team meeting with the team we were acquiring to throw it out there and let them know what the new expectations were.
I think it's so key that you give the team a roadmap so they don't think, well, what's next? What's the other shoe that's going to drop? It's like, our next step is the management system. And then our next step is carriers.
That's all people want is a plan. And they want to know who to ask questions to if they have them and when they come up.
All right. I am joined here today with Bobby Fernandez.
That's me.
Yeah. No, it's not you.
Like me.
I mean, if we're going to go with fake names, I don't know.
Would you really pick that one?
I'd take Stephen Harrington to kind of method fictitious name.
I wouldn't hyphenate. I would, if I was going to pick names, I wouldn't hyphenate. I would pick something very like vanilla and generic and hope the best.
I'd just be like Bob B, like just the letter B.
Bob B. Yeah, there we go. That's a good, maybe when I change my name, that's what I'll change it to.
That's what you should, yeah. If I was going to go into witness protection, you have to have a very like innocuous, lame name so that you don't stick out. Like I couldn't be like a Vivian.
I'd be a Crystal with a K.
So many thoughts on that. So many thoughts. Here's the good news. We're talking about how to successfully go through and get agencies together when you're buying a book of business, right? So this is exciting, I think. So buying a book of business is very exciting. Some agencies do it all the time. Some do it, once in a blue moon. Some have never done it. But I think in insurance, it's this very mysterious scenario of like, someone wants me to buy their book of business. I must do it at all costs and I will never walk away. And I kind of feel like there's opportunity there to be better and have some different scenarios. I'll start with Stephen just because in your past life, the company you worked for, the agency owner was like a cold-hearted professional.
A warm-hearted professional.
Yeah, that's it.
He loves to build relationships and buy things.
Yes.
Like a passion of his.
And he was very like non-assuming. So it was just like, he's just this nice, friendly guy we're going to sell our book to.
Yes. My favorite purchase was, or my favorite merge that we did was the owner walks into the office one day and asks for the owner and he wasn't available. So I come out, I'm like, how can I help you? And I'm like, oh, I know you. Shut up. Come to my office. And we're talking. He's like, yep, I think I'm ready to sell. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you said you were never going to do that. And the guy is like, yep, nope, I think it's time. So I call the owner. He gets together. They go to lunch. They come back to the office. They start looking at some numbers. The other employee, a small office, the owner and one employee. The employee runs a bunch of numbers, leaves for the day. They were supposed to meet at the end of the week. The employee decided to erase all the computers and take files and just left into the sunset she went.
Oh my God.
And the owner's like, oh, well, we had an Excel sheet where we kept everything. Otherwise, it's paper files. And so I got called in to then help coordinate the merge of the agency. So the other manager and myself got to spend weeks on end at this office, like getting clients under control and figure out where everything was. Because all we had was a bunch of paper files to go off.
That's amazing. Sounds really good.
But the good news was we had all of our processes and procedures in place, and we had a checklist from going through other acquisitions of notifying carriers, getting downloads into the system, like how to notify people. And we just went through our process and it made it quite a bit easier to where we were actually able to cross-license for a while. We did an employment agreement to where we were able to service the book so it didn't catch on fire more than it already was during the acquisition. But had we not had that experience of going through and having the checklist or knowing that we should be letting carriers know what was happening ahead of time or getting copies of the purchase sale agreement to send out to people, then it would have been a lot more of a problem than it really was.
Agree. Bobby, how about your experience? Any tips for people buying books of business that you'd love to just share with everybody?
I mean, I think you really need to understand what you're buying. And just because a lot of times that you do a due diligence, it doesn't really necessarily tell you how another agency is processing or exactly what you're walking into. So really analyzing those reports, understanding, maybe even spending some time in the agency prior to the acquisition. I know that that can be a little bit tricky sometimes because a lot of agencies may not want to disclose an acquisition prior to. It's kind of like telling your kids you're taking a trip to Disneyland, but we don't have anything booked yet, right? So we have to be careful about when we share that information, but really knowing and understanding what it is that we're walking into. Do they have an internet connection even using satellite, or are they hardwired? I mean, I've worked with some rural agencies where this is a problem and technology becomes apparent after the fact, but feeling like maybe that those are some things maybe we should have known ahead of time.
My personal favorite is I found we had an agency that purchased a book and they were premium financing personal lines. Mm-hmm. That didn't really come up in the discussions. So he actually went to the local bank in the shopping plaza and said, "Do you do personal loans? Can I just send everybody to you?" They're that used to it. And that's what they did. So I think, one of the things that is always sticky when you're buying a book of business is merging up the two teams, like Brady Bunching it, right? So and some agencies are very clear, like there is a non-solicitation on the book of business. Like not non-solicitation, non-disclosure. So you can't always go and tell the teams, or I've seen some where like literally the agency owner sells, comes in that day, I've sold the agency, the new owner's right here, have a nice day, and they walk out. Was that the model you might have been running?
No. Whenever possible, we like the team to be informed and know and have an onboarding period. Like, hey, here's what's happening. Like initial paperwork gets signed, like an initial agreement. And then it's normally like 30 to 60 days before it actually closes, like financing goes through or whatever. So that's the time we like start talking with the team and just letting them know, here's what's happening, here's what to expect. Let's have you get to know us a little bit to take away some of that panic. Because I remember during one of our acquisitions, I got a call that was like, I need you to go to that office right now. The team is freaking out and they don't know, they're all threatening to quit. And I was like, hey, so like as the manager, I went out and I was like, hey guys, like, let's go in the vault. It was an old bank, so they had an actual vault. And so when they said, let's go in the vault, they literally went into a vault. And it was because it was soundproof so that everybody could talk about their feelings or their frustrations or their questions or whatever. And it was the weirdest thing. Like, are you still going to pay for my parking permit? I'm like, it's $27 a month. I'm sure we can work something out. It was never like normally client related, or it was all those little questions that standard processes and procedures didn't address. Because we always provided the new team with like the updated employee manual and all of these things as we were going through the sales process so they could ask those questions and be more familiar about what to expect. So what we learned from that was we really needed to have an all-team meeting with the team we were acquiring to throw it out there, let them know what the new expectations were, give them some time to process, and then schedule time with them individually to ask their questions.
I think that's really good. I also think the biggest thing we forget, like you've been working on this deal for a long time, and then it comes in-house and like sometimes even like, hey, we're buying this agency, but they don't really know, right? Like I'm just doing my account manager thing or producing and not thinking it's going to impact me. And then like new people show up at your doorstep, or like there's new people in the phone tree and you got to merge phones and all this other stuff. And it gets crazy. And I think the biggest thing we forget is the first step is the two teams have to build trust between each other, because it's definitely like territorial, like Bloods and Crips.
A whole lot of little islands that only operate on their own.
Yeah. And I understand tons and tons and tons why that exists, right? Like, well, we do it this way. Who are these people? How much change? You got to remember the person you're buying is usually the most probably insecure, right? Like, I'm now a fish out of water. I don't understand. Why would we do it this way? We've done it this way. The old owner told me this was the only way to do it. Now you want me to do this. And like, they're constantly getting confronted with like a totally new way of doing things, right?
Absolutely.
So it's really important, I think, first step one, and I must say to agencies, and they don't love this, but I say, when you buy a book, maybe you just don't do anything for 6 months. Like, you just build relationships. Now, there's things that have to happen, right? Like the payroll has to happen. The banking account has to change. Like, there's things that have to happen. So just focus on those things that have to happen. And then understand who the team is, understand all those things. And then like in 6 months, say, okay, here's our roadmap for the remainder of the merger. And I think it's so key that you give the team a roadmap so they don't think, well, what's next? What's the other shoe that's going to drop? It's like, our next step is the management system. And then our next step is carriers. And we're going to book Rolex. And the next step is this. And that way they understand kind of where they're going versus, oh, another thing from so-and-so. Because let's be honest, a lot of the agencies that get acquired, they weren't really changing a lot, right? They were pre-retirement. So like they were in like the cruise mode, right? Like, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. There was no innovation, no pushing for technology, no pushing for the next level. The owner was probably happy with what they're making. So it was like, let's just keep the calm peace.
Well, I think the important thing too is if your house is messy, you can expect somebody else to come in and have it all be clean suddenly.
What are you talking about?
So you have to set yourself up. Your agency has to be running smoothly, or at least have a solid foundation,
right,
before you start throwing other agencies or other things into the mix.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's chaos because you didn't set the foundation for your agency. Now you're trying to blend two cultures together, and nobody has a foundation to go off of.
So true.
A lot of times during a merger, the communication will be, well, nothing is going to change. It's okay. Nothing is going to change except potentially your name, your producer codes, additional carrier,
your management system, your manager.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's kind of that theory that why people don't make renewal reviews. Well, we don't want to poke the sleeping bear. We don't want to know who might possibly leave us because we're afraid to know, is any of the staff going to potentially leave? But we need to have clear, open communication and expectations. And that's all people want is a plan. And they want to know who to ask questions to if they have them and when they come up.
I also think it's so important, though, that upfront it's very clear who people report to, because as you guys know, doing assessments, one of my favorite questions is, who do you report to? And they all look like, well, for time off, it's Sally. My review hasn't happened in 6 years, so I'm not sure there. And then it's like, there's this like loosey-goosey infrastructures. And I think that gets real messy. And so, I think some of the hardest acquisitions are when you acquire someone about the same size as you, right? Because it's easy when it's like, okay, well, there's this book and it's kind of overstaffed and we're just going to kind of tuck it in and all is well. But like when you're acquiring like agencies that have the same headcount, and one of them inevitably always has more infrastructure, more technology. The other one has maybe more producers, and maybe one's heavy personal, the other one's heavy commercial. And so it like becomes this whole massive chaos scenario that just needs to be dealt with. And again, the agency principals a lot of times just think it's like a checkbox. Well, check, we told the team. It's like,
done.
Okay, so that's step one. They don't trust each other as far as they can throw them. So they don't know each other's names. We might need to do just like a little more to bring them together.
Collaboration is key during that time. They need to feel like they have a voice too.
Well, and your managers, another thing we see in agencies, a lot of like quote unquote managers are really more team leads than true leadership managers. Like they're escalation people, which is great. But now they're going to be asked to manage a team double in size, and they either might not have those tools, might not ever been led that way by the current agency, or that's just not really their skill set. They're happy being an escalation person, but they don't want to make sure Sally comes in on time every day, or like go through all the drama and some of that stuff. So it is difficult. And I think, be curious in you guys' experience, like what percentage of the team when you acquire an agency makes it through to the other side?
I think it depends on the culture of the agency to begin with. as well. I think that's another, a lot of times we see like lots of family is employed, yet we don't know what they do. So some mergers and half the team makes
That was literally the call I was on Friday. It's like, I was doing the count, like how many people need assessment they were going. And it's like, well, you don't need to interview my brother. I'm like, well, why not? Well, he's just kind of here.
Right. There's somewhere I'm like, so how many people are on payroll? And they're like 25. And I'm like, and how many interviews do we do? They're like 14. I'm like, where's the other 11 people? And they're like, well, this one's part-time and doesn't do it. And then my mom does this, and then my sister, and I'm a cousin. And I'm like, that's amazing. But I think that, I mean, if it's a solid team to begin with a well-run agency that's merging into another well-run agency, it's pretty comparable, right? It's like a 80-90% retention with the staff. I've seen, most of the staff last 6 months, or for perpetuity, they give it at least a shot, or they don't like something that's changing about the new culture. They don't like regulation. But I think if it was a questionably run agency, like the ones gliding into retirement and they're way overstaffed just so they don't have to do anything, I think it's probably like 50 to 60% of the staff that survives the merger.
I think that's really even generous.
I think it really depends on how the processes, procedures, and the foundation of the agency, and how efficient the agency that's purchasing it is.
Yeah, I remember walking into an agency once where the woman was like pre-retirement age, very nice woman, but she was like, "It's the workload here is insane." Now, she made the most out of any team member in personal lines, and she had the smallest book. And I just said to her, I go, "Okay, what do you think an appropriate number of clients is per account manager?" And she thought for a second. She's like, "Probably 100." And I was like, "We're gonna do eight client renewals a month, like one." And they didn't sell; they had a producer, and like, there's no like. I was like, "So we're gonna do like a renewal like every other day?" She's just like, "These renewals are very labor intensive."
Not right.
And I was like, so I did the math. I go, well, the commissions on that alone, like wouldn't pay your salary. She goes, well, that seems like a challenge. And literally she gave her retirement a week later, her notice. And I was like, yeah,
and I think to Stephen's point, right? Like, I think it depends on the setup and the accountability. Like, if you're moving into an agency where there is some more accountability and some more tracking and metrics that are happening, those individuals that are maybe not used to that are maybe going to weather it through the storm, like those that are looking for a plan or really want to have a future. So I think being able to identify that ahead of time is going to be important.
No doubt. And I love the word accountability because, again, like I think a lot of times like pre-retirement, like kind of got away with a lot. And then you go into a bigger agency, which has more structure and processes and people and metrics and a lot of those things. And it's like, this is crazy here. It's like, no, you got away with murder over here. Enjoy that time frame. And I don't know where you're going to go and find another agency. There was another agency that I work with, and the two women in commercial lines I think their combined average age is like 98. I'm being a little, but well past retirement, and they still work. I think it's because they don't want to be home all day with their husbands. So like they have this, and they were saying, we're so overstaffed, we're so overworked. Well, they wanted to find someone that was on TAM with paper files. And that like, and the two producers were also in their 70s, right? And so like they needed to have their paper files, and they wanted to find someone that was plug and play that was going to do that work. And I go, do you think we're going to find someone that's, in that next age bracket? We probably need to, because you guys are going to retire at some point, that's going to be down with paper files. She looked at me, she goes, I don't see why not. And I was like,
what?
We need to get it all in TAM. We need to take the leap. And then they said, well, we don't like it in TAM. And I said, okay. So I think that the big key that you just have to remember is it's like, it's a lot of change for people to go through. It's not that you made the decision to buy the agency, so you saw value in it. So you can only imagine like how this staff feels, and you do want to try to keep them on. I think another big thing to look at is your carrier portfolio. We had an agency buy 12 books of business in a year and a half. The final count was there was, I think, 93 carriers they had contracts with due to acquisitions of like small mutuals. Like this was all like farm country, Wisconsin. And they were like, one of the staff complaints was like, we have policies here, but I don't have a login.
Sure.
Imagine onboarding a new employee and be like, let's go through the 93 carriers and get you 93 logins to the companies. And so we end up like working on a book roll strategy to like get, and some of these carriers had like 3 policies with them.
Yeah.
So if you're going to get in the acquisition game, you do have to figure that part out, right? Like how are we going to merge it all together? So we get a bottom line this. I would like everybody's biggest tip, how to successfully buy an insurance agency. Steven, what's your tip?
Get your house cleaned up before you get somebody else's house merged in.
Clean your junk drawer, clean your underwear drawer, make room in the closets for the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Find out if they do Taco Tuesday or not, what their jam is. How about you, Bobby?
I would say go slow to go fast on integrating your technology and really taking the time to thoughtfully do that and make sure that you have, like Steven said, get your house in order, guys. It's going to be important.
I like that. Get your house in order. And mine is going to be the same thing with Bobby, but just a little different spin is go slow to build the teams together. Like it's hard to build trust sometimes even when you've worked together for a long time versus these new people, maybe in another location that don't do things the way that you're used to them being done, right? And to Steven's final couple with that is I like to do some cross-functional teams for processes and get them together because you might be like, well, our processes are great. Well, I can tell you by getting into agencies, a lot of times the processes might be written down, but not everybody in your own house is following them 100%. Mm-hmm. So it's real easy to throw the stones to the new team. Like they don't follow our process when half the people at your agency are following it. So it's kind of like a little blend between both of you guys. So I don't want to poo-poo though. Buying agencies is amazing. It definitely makes money. It's definitely a great way to grow. You just have to know what you're getting yourself into, which is a different conversation. Well, thanks guys for joining the podcast today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.